Okay, well, it's 2:30. Good afternoon and a warm welcome to today's Rushcliffe Borough Council Planning Committee meeting, although it's not a warm day. And welcome everybody. Because we've got quite a few visitors here today, I'd like to just mention that if there's an emergency, a fire alarm, that type of thing, we're not expecting any sort of fire alarm drill. So if something does happen, then we escape through the side doors there. Basically follow us, but we're not expecting any incidents. So welcome to the meeting. I'm Councillor Richard Butler. I'm the chairman of the planning committee, and with me on the top table today I have my vice chairman, Councillor Mrs Stockwood, and I have officers, Mr Miles, who's the area planning officer, Mr Cook, who's a deputy planning manager, Andrea Baxter from the planning team, Emily Dodd, who is the planning manager, and Mrs Walker, who is the borough solicitor. So welcome. I'd like to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the council's YouTube channel. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the council's YouTube channel. In addition, under the Local Authorities, Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information England Regulations 2012, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from the meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the council's control. May I remind members to please switch your microphones off when you're not speaking, and also switch them on when you are speaking, because everyone needs to be able to hear clearly what's being said. So we'll go on into the meeting. The first item on the agenda, which is any apologies for absence and substitute members, please.
Apologies for absence have been received from Councillors Bansal, Bailey, Ely and Jen Walker, and acting as reserves are Councillor Phillips, Councillor Upton and Councillor Murray.
Thank you very much. Welcome to our substitute councillors. Item 2 is any declarations of interest, A, under the Code of Conduct or under the Planning Code. Does anyone have anything to... Councillor Thomas.
Yes, I'm the ward member for the first application, so I'll be stepping up for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there's no others, no. So we will now move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the when was it? It was on the I've got the data somewhere. It was the previous meeting. Here we are. It was held on in February, wasn't it? Yes, it was held on the 9th of February. Those of us who were here, are we happy that those are an accurate reflection of the meeting? Thank you very much, and Councillor Stockwood chaired that. Right, just before we go into today's planning applications, I need to check, have we all received the late representations that have been sent through on email? And some of us got printed copies as well. Have we all seen and read those? Yes, okay, thank you. So we'll move into the main items on the agenda this afternoon, which are planning applications. We've got 2 to discuss and decide today. The first one is land to the west of Wood Lane and Stocking Lane on the Kingston Estate in Gotham. This is the installation of renewable energy generating solar farm comprising ground-mounted photovoltaic solar arrays, together with substation, inverter stations, security measures, site access, internal access tracks and other ancillary infrastructure, including landscaping and biodiversity enhancements. So we will have a presentation now from Mr. Miles, and so as soon as you're ready, if you address the committee, and just a reminder about the microphone as well, so nice and clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good to be back. You may recall back in November we had a similar type of development at Church Farm, and Andrew Ashcroft just run through some of the policy requirements as part of assessing that application. I'd like to do the same. In terms of the policy overview, just generally I'd like to remind the committee that we need to develop, consider and decide these applications in accordance with a development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. In this instance, national policy set out in NPPF. It's more up to date than our development plan. As and our policy, while still relevant, will take time to catch up with the low carbon economy requirements set out by central government. The report has considered all important material considerations, and members need to consider all of these and factor them in when making a decision. Paragraph 157 is an important part of the NPPF. It states that when determining planning applications, in short, that they should be approved if they could be made acceptable environmental terms. What we can't question is the need for renewable energy. Whilst it's not a direct instruction, it's very clear the direction of travel in terms of what's set out by central government and NPPF. Now, the sites within the Nottinghamshire Greenbelt. Now, considering this application, we also have to consider paragraphs 147 and 148 of the NPPF. And it basically says if it's inappropriate development, it shouldn't be considered in the Greenbelt. It also states that when considering planning applications for renewable energy, we have to take into account that the wider benefits of renewable energy can be a benefit and provide a justification for these very special circumstances. Now, at local plan level, we've got policy 16, which provides a framework to assess application against at local plan level, and that's very detailed, and the report has been framed and considered against each of those criteria set out in policy 16. I'd like to go into what is proposed. As mentioned, we've got basically a solar farm here. What does it include? It includes a generating capacity of just under 50 megawatts. It forms part of land contained within Kingston Estate and measures some 80 hectares. It's basically a series of agricultural farms all joined together. And in essence, it forms two sites. There's a northern part and a southern part, and it's divided by an area of woodland. There are pockets of residential development and agricultural buildings in and around the northern part and the southern part of the site. And more crucially, there's a series of footpaths to the north and running through the site and in and around both the north and the southern parts of the site. The site's accessed by Wood Lane, which is off Kegworth Road to the north. There are no heritage assets on or alongside the site, and there's no formal ecological designation on the site. It's not classed as the best and most versatile agricultural land. In terms of what's proposed, we've basically got strings and rows of PV panels. They're mounted up to 3.1 meters high, and there'll be also other buildings, substation buildings, inverter station buildings, equipment cabins, and a security fence. A deer fence would be about 2.4 meters high, and there'd also be security cameras around the site. It'd be accessed from Wood Lane. It's proposed to widen access from Kegworth Road to obtain access to the site for construction purposes. There'd be no access from Stockton. There'd be no access from Stocking Lane for construction or maintenance or otherwise. And importantly, it'd be for a 40-year period, and afterwards it's stated that the site would be decommissioned and returned to agriculture. Now, parts of the existing hedgerow would be removed for access and for panels and to put up the security fence. However, more hedgerows are proposed to be planted in replacement for those lost by about 63% more. And there'll be various other biodiversity enhancements in terms of wildflower meadow, grass planting, and biodiversity enhancements to the hedgerows, etc. Now, on to the main part of it, the assessment of the application. The primary consideration is the landscape and visual impact. And this is being considered in detail in the report from paragraph 103. A landscape and visual assessment has been submitted, and it's been assessed by external independent landscape and visual landscape experts. And they come to the conclusion that they're in agreement with the conclusions of the landscape and visual assessment. And what we would say is, what's proposed in front of you now is been updated since consultation with the landscape advisor. It's been reduced in size twice. Two of the fields, field 16 is no longer part of the proposals, and 50% of field 15 is no longer part of the proposals. As I say, that's all covered in 103 of the committee report, but the crux of the matter is, what impact would it have? Now, clearly it would have an impact primarily on users of the footpath, the greatest of which would be down at field 15. Let me just get a plan up. Bear with us. Greatest of which would be along at field 15, which is on the southern part of the site, and that is considered to be a moderate to major adverse impact over the life of the development. Now, that impact varies along that footpath and from other footpaths, but as a worst case scenario, the impact would be a moderate major adverse impact over the life of the development. But of course, that's got to be viewed in the context that, whilst it's termed temporary, it's 40 years, it's a long time, but it is reversible. Now, the impact on residents, there are residents that are directly adjacent to the application site. On the north, Cuckoo Bush Farm, and on the south at Stone House and the cottage. Amended plans have shown that we've proposed the development further from these residential properties, and a buffer's been put in place between them. Now, in terms of the impact on the footpath, we have a plan here provided by the applicant, which provides a cross-section of what is proposed. Hopefully you can see that. So you have the footpath, a gap, a hedgerow, a series of trees, another gap, and then the panels themselves. You'll just see, for illustration purposes, an elevation of the panels there on the second one down on the left. Now, all of this needs to be weighed into the planning balance. There's no doubt about that. It would have an impact, and a significant impact in terms of the visual amenity when viewed from the footpath. But that has to be viewed in with the planning balance, and that's considered at the end of the report, which we'll come to. In terms of other matters, there's no listed buildings or conservation areas on the site or close to the site, so therefore there's no heritage aspects that are of any concern. The public right-of-way officer has not objected to the application. She actually supports improvements to the public right-of-way, and addition of a new permissive path would be on the southern part of the site. As I say, it doesn't comprise of the best and most versatile agricultural land, and there's no requirement to consult Natural England or consider a loss of agricultural land according to the NPPF. Now, the conclusion of all of these matters is to weigh up whether the harm, both visually and to the openness of the green belt, provides the very special circumstances to approve the application. That's the crux of this application. Now, as set out in the report, acknowledge that there would be harm, but the benefits of renewable energy installation are substantial. And we think that the benefits are of sufficient magnitude to clearly outweigh the substantial harm to the green belt by reason of inappropriateness and, as I mentioned, harm to openness of the green belt. These benefits in terms of contributing to the low carbon economy, providing a source of renewable energy, carry significant weight in the planning process. In this context, the harm to green belt and any other harm would be clearly outweighed, in our opinion as officers, by the considerations identified in the report, and it's our opinion that very special circumstances necessary to justify the development exist. Accordingly, it's considered that the proposal would satisfy the local and national greenbelt policies, and therefore it is recommended that planning permission be granted. Thank you. We'll also have a couple of pictures we'd like to set out here, highlighting the site just in case anyone's unaware.
So we have circulated some paper copies with the viewpoints marked on, just so you can get your bearings a little bit better. So I'll just go through. They're marked on here with the numbers and then the arrows showing you where the views are taken from. So just give you a bit more context of it.
Yeah, so 1 and 2 is on the northern part of the site of Wood Lane. Number two is out by Cuckoo Bush Farm, which is one of the properties that would potentially be affected by the proposal. Number 3 is by Cuckoo Bush Farm. Number 4 is a little further south, but still in the northern part of the site, viewed into the 3 to 4 fields that are proposed for panels. There's picture number 4 there. Yeah, that's still the northern part of the site. Yep. 7 is a view from the public footpath overlooking towards field 15, which the landscape officers indicated is the most sensitive area. And 7 just gives a different, 8 just gives a different perspective on that view. 9 and 10 is to the south, around Stonehouse and the cottage, and views further south, showing the wider landscape and areas of woodland.
So, Chairman, sorry, could you just clarify which was field 15 again? Can you just confirm? The avoidance of doubt.
Field 15, that's okay, Chair. Field 15 is on the southern part of the site, and it's northernmost field alongside the public right of way to the north. Does that help? Okay.
So those are all the photographs that we've got to look at. Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you, Mr. Miles. Now we have a few speakers on this item from our visitors today. We have two visitors and the ward member will be speaking. So the first speaker is Claire Chamberlain, who is the applicant's agent. The way it works, if you sit at the chair there and speakers have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. If you're still speaking at 4.5 minutes, we'll let you know there's 30 seconds left. But we have strict rules that if you're still speaking at 5 minutes, we have to ask you to stop. And it is just an address in the committee, It's not a debate or a discussion. As soon as you're ready, press the right hand button and the red light will come on and the clock will start counting down.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to address the Planning Committee today. My name is Claire Chamberlain. The heat waves and droughts experienced across the UK in 2022 were a stark reminder that the UK, along with the rest of the world, are in a climate crisis. We are also in an unprecedented energy crisis, which is driving the cost of living crisis. Both the UK government's net zero strategy and energy security strategy call for a significant increase in solar and other renewable electricity generation to contribute to a flow of energy that is affordable, clean, and above all, secure. No longer in need of subsidy, solar farms are one of the most flexible and affordable ways to deliver on climate change and energy security targets. RES is a known and reputable developer who have been at the forefront of the renewables industry for over 40 years. We have used our wealth of experience when developing the Kingston Solar Farm to create a carefully sited and designed solar project which lies outside of any statutory environmental, archaeological, and landscape designations. Committed to consulting from an early stage with stakeholders and the local community, feedback from the local community influenced and helped shape the design of the solar farm, with changes made both prior to and post-submission. The landscape review commissioned by Rushcliffe Borough Council has confirmed that there is no intervisibility or cumulative impact with the other proposed solar schemes in the area. RES considered the availability of other sites within 2 kilometres of the grid point of connection, and 96.3% of the land within 2 kilometres is greenbelt, with the other remaining being the village of Gotham. Therefore, there is no option to develop outside of the greenbelt close to this viable grid connection. In the recent appeal decision for Cannon Barnes and Hill Farm solar project, the planning inspectorate determined that very special circumstances could be demonstrated. The same is true for the Kingston Solar Farm, namely that meeting the country's energy goals justifies the impact on the openness of the greenbelt. The most notable benefit is the project's contribution to the UK's government's legally binding targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Kingston Solar would be capable of producing clean, low-cost electricity for approximately 12,400 homes every year, resulting in a substantial displacement of approximately 20,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions annually, and some 800,000 tonnes over its lifetime, compared to the equivalent generation from fossil fuels. It is important to note that no electricity generation is designed to work at full capacity. This should not be confused with operational efficiency. Furthermore, the project would deliver long-term environmental benefits, delivering a biodiversity net gain of over 63% in hedgerow units and over 26% in habitat units, which is significantly higher than the 10% net gain required, as outlined by the Environment Act 2021. It should also be noted that the project is fully reversible and the site can be reinstated back to its current greenfield state following the operational period of 40 years. No land classified as best and most versatile will be used by Kingston Solar. All the land containing solar infrastructure has been classified subgrade 3B. The solar farm is specifically designed to be dual purpose, enabling continued agricultural use in the form of sheep grazing. Kingston would not pose a threat to food security. One of the biggest risks to food security is climate change. The solar farm could deliver direct economic benefit to the area by generating jobs both during the construction and decommissioning phases. And the solar farm would be subject to business rates of around £164,000 a year, money used directly by Rushcliffe Borough Council to support vital local services. We understand the value of the existing public rights of way network to the local community. Our specific public rights of way management plan, which covers all potential interactions, including visual and noise, sets out the public rights of way and how they will be protected and enhanced. All routes will remain open at all times. An additional recreational benefit will be delivered through the installation of a new permissive path linking 2 existing bridleways. In summary, the Kingston Solar Farm demonstrates very special circumstances by its contribution to renewable generating capacity. the appropriate siting of the development in relation to the grid availability, and the reversibility of the development at the end of its life. The planning balance is strongly in favour of this application, and no objections from technical consultees have been received, including
That's
British
time.
Gypsum. Thank you, and we ask that this project is supported as per the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. And we have another speaker on this item, who is Mr. Peter Mostyn, who is speaking to object to the application. So, Mr. Mostyn. And as you've heard, you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee as soon as you're... Oh, you've got your stopwatch as well. Very good. So as soon as you hit the red button, the timer will start. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors. As you know, this solar application has aroused a lot of community opposition. Witness all the people sitting behind me. On a better day, with more than a few days' notice, and if this meeting had been held in the evening, I reckon there would be 100 to 150 people sat here. Anyway, I have already emailed to you my qualifications for representing the many in our community who object to this solar farm. My email's purpose was to enable me to get straight down to business. I hope I do so in a way which assists your debate. The report from the planners helpfully lists and analyses the relevant national and local laws and guidance, but we surely all agree that the crucial planning document is the NPPF, whose paragraph 147 states that inappropriate development is by definition harmful to the green belt and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. In a nutshell, the VSCs must clearly outweigh the harms for the application to be approved. I start with VSCs and the solar ban stated. I have time only to make some bullet points. 2 points I was going to make were apparent 4 months ago and have only just been declared today. That's to do with the number of households that would receive power and the carbon dioxide displacement. But for sure, this facility will not create anything like 49.9 megawatts of power because, surprise, surprise, the sun doesn't always shine in the UK. Official data for 2019 recorded that solar panels generate only 11.1% of the rated amount, so 5.5 megawatts might be more accurate than 49.9. This inefficiency, of course, increases the harms by spreading the solar farm over a much larger area. Yes, we have an energy crisis, but I am told that solar farms are not reducing our energy bills because electricity prices are linked to the dearest form of gas supply. Great news for solar developers and landowners, but not for the public suffering a cost of living crisis. Biodiversity is all the rage, but those who know this area have made points contesting the BNV claims as debatable. If I go on about the overstated VSCs, I will run out of time to list the understated harms as follows. This area is one of the most beautiful open green belt spaces in Rushcliffe. The key word in the green belt, as I'm sure you know, is not the word green, but open. It therefore follows that the farm's electrical generating machinery, by virtue of its height and bulk and quantity, closes the area. Outside is a pair of mocked-up panels whose top edge is 2.8 meters high. If you haven't seen this monstrosity, either you've not peeked outside or you've not been to Specsavers. It also follows that new hedging to hide the machinery eventually further deprives the area of its openness. What's special and perhaps unique about this site is the public rights-of-way network. There are almost a dozen differently numbered bridleways and footpaths which surround and/or penetrate the site. They either link Westleek and Eastleek and Gotham or facilitate already a circular tour. Because of the huge increase in the number of households you've sanctioned and their proximity to the network, this network is hugely popular in volume of use and appeal because of the beautiful open vistas of rural farmland. It's not just the physical benefits we obtain from using them, it's also the proven mental and emotional benefits of being in open rural countryside. A solar industry compound cannot provide those benefits, rather the reverse. Also lost will be the arable fields. It is convenient, of course, to dismiss, as we've heard twice already, that these fields are not BMV because they're only 3B. If you study the agricultural land classification in a nutshell, 3B is misleading. Their crops can be as good as BMV land because the distinction between 3A and 3B is minimal. Sheep for 40 years will be no substitute for
30
the crops we
seconds.
need because of the food security crisis. I haven't the time to go on, but to ask why the report deems the VSCs outweigh the harms when they don't, in a nutshell, is because the report is littered with conclusions unjustified by the preceding analysis. This reporting bias in favour of the developer is due to the clause in planning law and guidance which virtually mandate the planners to approve a solar farm application. The result is a balance and conclusions that you really cannot rely on, and I
That's
submit
time.
that you should not do so. The only safe decision is to refuse this application because the VSCs do not outweigh the many harms. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meston. Thank you. And we have one of the ward members wishes to speak to us now, Councillor Thomas. And you know how it works. As soon as it's ready, as soon as you're ready, press the button. And up to 5 minutes. Oh, sorry. Yes, you've got some pictures, haven't you? So I beg your pardon. I should have mentioned that. Yes, sorry. Yeah. So we've got them geared up, ready. So yes. So over to you.
Thank you very much. This is a huge site between the villages of Westleek, Eastleek and Gotham, 1.5 miles long along the ridgeline of the Westleek Hills. Scenic and elevated countryside with sweeping views, a patchwork of woods and fields crisscrossed by public rights of way, rich in wildlife. It is Greenbelt, where a solar farm is by definition inappropriate development, so very special circumstances need to be demonstrated. Paragraph 151 of the NPPF does allow the benefits of renewable energy to count towards very special circumstances, but this is by no means a trump card. As paragraph 240 of the officer report confirms, it's only one factor to be considered in the balance against the harm to the Greenbelt. Other policies, such as policy 16 of local plan part 2, also need to be satisfied. I ask you to refuse the application because the magnitude and nature of the proposals would have a major adverse impact on landscape character and visual amenity, and because the application is contrary to policies in the local plan and the NPPF. Very special circumstances have not been demonstrated in this case because the wider environmental benefit of the renewable energy generation does not outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt. There are other reasons to refuse to, some in my late representations paper. Next slide, please. National and local policies both require benefits to be assessed against cumulative harm, and Councillor Walker from Gotham has particularly asked me to cover this. There are two ways of looking at it. One is the cumulative impact of all the solar farms in the area. 2 huge solar farms have already been approved, plus 1 smaller. There are 4 more giants out to consultation and at the screening stage, and no doubt several more that the officers are aware of. So much for the applicant's claim that there are no other possible sites nearby. Sites already identified would supply twice as many homes as there are in Rushcliffe. Next picture, please. But solar farms are only one sort of development gobbling up our countryside and greenbelt. So the second map shows all types of development. Gotham is being ringed by industrial scale development, including Fareham, the LDO site, a potential large logistics site and possibly a quarry. Eastleek is being ringed by large housing estates. Look at Gotham, look at these developments collectively, look at cumulative harm. In this situation, access to the countryside is so important, and the rural tranquility of this unique oasis in the middle of all this development acts as a green lung, where wildlife thrives and gives people a place to walk, ride and breathe. Compare the respective areas of these blobs. The solar farms could be on the roofs of buildings and covering parking areas rather than using up land that produces food. Next picture, please. This area has good access for recreation, as this map shows, with bridleways and footpaths from all the surrounding villages and a long-distance trail, the Midshires Way, running through it. It is well used and much valued. Next picture, please. The independent landscape reviewer asked the applicant to carry out a greenbelt assessment. The applicant's done so, but this self-assessment does not seem to be independently reviewed. Surely this is unacceptable. The reviewer specifically wanted openness to be assessed, but there appears to be very little consideration of this. Next picture, please. There are long distance views out over open countryside at several points, and these would be obliterated. The views I'm showing from 2 properties were specifically highlighted by the reviewer as needing mitigation, and the revised plans have additional screening. But I'd like to make 2 points about this. Firstly, that screening here and elsewhere may hide the panels to some extent, but it doesn't mitigate against the loss of openness. On the contrary, it makes it worse. The second point is that it's not just the views out from these points that are spoilt, it's the views towards them from the surrounding countryside too. Panels here will be visible from a wide area.
30 seconds.
Just one more thing I'd like to highlight. This get out of jail free card that the solar farm is temporary just for 40 years. 40 years! How many of us can expect to see this land back in its current agricultural use? And just one more thing I'd like to say is that if you refuse this application, it need not go to appeal. There is scope here for the applicant to work with the community and modify the scheme to reduce the adverse impacts and add benefits.
Time.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Right, thank you. That's thank you, Councillor Thomas. Our final guest speaker. So we've heard from the representative of the applicant, and we've heard from an objector from the public and the ward councillor who is also objecting. Various points covered by the applicant in favour of the application, pointing out the climate crisis and government policy, the flexible and affordable options, and consideration of location and greenhouse emissions, etc. Mr. Mostyn pointed out the worries about the impact on the or the benefits versus special circumstances, which he doesn't agree have been shown or proven, and referred to the national planning policy and other rules. He disputes the power or the claimed power that the panels would produce. He says it will be considerably less because the sun doesn't shine very often, and also referred to open green belt. And we've also seen, and I would confirm we have seen the mock-up that you brought, which we have all seen, either from inside the building or outside. And then finally, we heard from Councillor Thomas, who picked up on those points, but also the national planning policy framework guidance with regards to cumulative harm. And she considers there are plenty of sites in the area already, and is an advocator of panels on roofs, etc. I think that's covered most of the points that were covered. Can you pick up on some of those between you, just to help us along, and then we'll go into a committee debate, please.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll move that closer. Yeah, so I think I'll just pick up on the cumulative impact. So Councillor Thomas prepared quite a useful slide there to help explain the cumulative impact. We have got a bit more detailed one here, which I'm going to attempt to zoom in, but knowing my luck. So here we've got, on the left-hand side of the screen is the borough as a whole. I don't know how easy that is to see, which shows not only the solar farms that we have permitted in the area, but also shows on there our allocated housing sites that are in our local plan, our local development order site, which is going through its process at the moment, and also shows our sustainable urban extension, which is the large yellow blob over here, which is the Fareham. Members might want to note in this more exploded map, you've got the application that's before you today, which is this sort of long straggly bit in the middle. Down here, underneath our local development order site, is the Church Farm solar farm, which came to committee in November, which was permitted. And obviously you had a presentation at that point setting out all the various policy reasons. So hopefully that gives a bit more information on the cumulative impact. So you can see exactly what is going on in that area of the borough. I think Mr. Miles was just going to pick up on the openness question. I think there was a concern that hadn't been adequately addressed.
Just a quick point, Chair. You mentioned about the openness of the Greenbelt. Yeah, that is explained in the report, paragraph 90, to say that it would have an impact on openness of the Greenbelt in terms of its spatial impact and its visual impact. Does note, however, that this has to be viewed in the context that it would be temporary. And to be taken into account with the mitigation measures as proposed.
Okay, right, thank you. So we can now go into discussion and debate. The key issue here, as we've heard several times, is the balance, isn't it, between the landscaping and the visual impact, as opposed to the very special circumstances that are cited in the National Planning Policy Framework that we read and hear a lot about. So there is a lot to consider on this. So we have a couple of speakers already to speak. The first one is Councillor Upton, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As you say, there's a lot of issues and playing here. I'm not going to take them in any priority order, just a few observations, really. I know this area. I've walked it some years ago, I admit, but I do recall that ridge line of what I believe to be the Westleak Hills and those long distance views. So I get it in terms of the area we're talking about. I also understand the issues at play here, for instance, food security, energy security, the cost of living pressures, the green belt, sheep and all the rest of it. So, I mean, it's a complex issue we have before us this afternoon. I've read the report, I've seen the mock-up. In 40 years' time, I'll be 113 if I make it. So I'll park that one for the time being. But in the report, paragraph, without labouring it too much, paragraphs 79 and 81, I'm always drawn to, as you probably know. Paragraph 79, the government and its view on Greenbelt. Quote, government attaches great importance to Greenbelts, and so do I and many others, I suspect, in this room and the borough. And paragraph 81, the NPPF, for those who are not aware of these acronyms, the National Planning Policy Framework, states that, quote, inappropriate development is, by definition, harmful to the green belt and should not be approved except in, and these words keep coming up, do they not, very special circumstances. Now, I'm not sure, and I'll listen to the debate, I'm not convinced yet that there are very special circumstances. I don't think that the proposal and its impacts, I'm not persuaded yet that they are acceptable or indeed can be made acceptable to comply with that definition there. So at the moment, I've yet to be persuaded to vote for this because, as I say, there are a number of issues at play, big issues, but I picked up on the inefficiency points made about solar farms that, you know, you're given certain statistics and data when they're working at full strength. But yeah, the sun isn't shining today unless it's come out in the last half hour. So, you know, thank you. I've made some comments. There's not many questions there. I look forward to the debate and I'll make a decision.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Upton. Yes, you've made some very clear points there, and there's no need to come back on those at this stage. So my next speaker is Councillor Murray, please.
I agree with solar panels. I've got them on my roof, but that's where they belong, not in beautiful countryside. The suggested planting mitigation measures would be seriously out of keeping and would largely worsen rather than mitigate for the landscape and visual impact. For example, planting hedging right next to the bridleway. There are already mature trees next to the footpath. Planting on the other side of the footpath will create a tunnel, making people walking these paths vulnerable to attack and scared of walking these paths. And I think we need to look at these very carefully.
Okay, thank you. Yes, because there are quite a number of footpaths around there we know about, and we've read and heard the people's strong feeling and considerable use of them as well. So thank you for that. Councillor Clark and then Councillor.
Councillor Murray's still got to go.
Oh, can you turn your microphone off? Yes, sir. So we've now got Councillor Clark and then Councillor Phillips, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm generally in favour of solar panels and renewable energy by virtue of solar panels, because it is a great way of producing electricity. I have to say, not at any cost. And I think this is where this debate needs to be, that balance that has already been mentioned both by officers and also in the debate. And this balance is absolutely vitally important, because we need to be finding ways of producing electricity by renewable energy. But, and in fact, Councillor Upton referred to it, we also need to be ensuring, not finding ways, but ensuring that we are protecting the green belt wherever we possibly can. This application basically is huge. I'm in favour of solar panels, as I say, and I think if there had been smaller sites that had been proposed, then might have taken a different view. But this is just enormous, and I think that the landscaping that is being proposed is just not sufficient to mitigate the harmful effect that this would have on the openness and the character of the countryside. I don't think you can underestimate the visual impact that this proposal would have at all. This issue of temporary and 40 years, you know, when is temporary permanently temporary, and when is temporarily, if you like? Because 40 years, you're talking nearly 2 generations. I don't want to insult anybody, but I suspect there's probably a larger proportion of people here in this room today are probably not going to be around in 40 years. I apologise in advance if I've offended anybody. Obviously, it applies only to some people. However, the fact is that this part of the countryside is extremely well enjoyed. Now, the issue of the applicant's agent referred to viability and the closeness of the power supply, which is, yeah, and that's something for the applicant to consider in terms of operational aspect, but that's not something for us to worry about as to the closeness of the power supply, because we need to be considering the impact in terms of planning issues. And it is this green belt issue, and whether the benefits of the renewable energy outweigh the harm to the green belt, and whether those very special circumstances can be demonstrated. So I think that if we take into account for instance, the impact on the use of the footpaths, the impact of the landscape, in my view, whilst it is a balance, I don't think that the benefits of the renewable energy aspects do outweigh the harm to the green belt. So I'll put on the table here, Mr. Chairman. Let's not mess about. I'll propose that the application is refused on the grounds that the wider benefits of renewable energy are not outweighed by the substantial harm to the green belt. I'm desperately trying to read all my notes I've just scribbled, by virtue of the adverse impact on the openness of the countryside and visual amenity of the landscape and impact on users of the footpath network. Therefore, this does not demonstrate sufficient reasons to allow this proposal, as very special circumstances have not been demonstrated to allow the proposal. Sufficient very special circumstances.
Okay, thank you. So those being material, so I think for confirmation, those would be viable material planning reasons, I think, wouldn't they? Should a proposal be made? Can we just confirm that?
Yes, they would be. The very special circumstances are for you as decision makers to weigh up. And if you don't consider they have sufficient weight to outweigh that harm, then that is a reasonable conclusion you could come to. And that would be in line with what the NPPF says. So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, perhaps before we go any further with that, I've got 2 or 3 other speakers who want to come in. So are you in effect formally moving something at this stage? Or,
Yeah, I did say.
Sorry, did you say that?
I did say I wouldn't mess about.
Oh,
I would propose.
Right, I beg your yeah,
I
okay.
would make a proposal. So
Well,
I'm
okay,
proposing refusal.
Well, that being the case, then you've made the proposal for the reasons given, and we've checked that those are valid reasons. We're early in the proceedings, but at this stage, do you have a seconder for that? So, Councillor Upton. So, right, okay. So, Councillor Clark and Councillor Upton seconding that. So, do you want to add anything at this point, Councillor Upton? I've not forgotten. I've got other speakers who wanted to come in.
No, thank you, Chairman.
No.
I think Councillor Clark's echoed many of my points that I made on the green belt. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you, gentlemen. We need to carry on with Councillor Phillips, and then Price, and then Purdue Horridge. All the please. So, Councillor Phillips, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I can totally relate to the concerns about this application, and I have got a number of questions I was going to ask, and that was if it was likely to go forward and be approved, and the way things are looking, I might just park those questions until later on. What I will say is I'm very familiar with this area. I mountain bike through all those green lanes, the bridle tracks, the footpaths, and it is a wonderful space, open space, and it is very, very refreshing. Also understand that we do need green energy. We had a similar situation in my ward, Compton Acres, where we had to lose a wildlife corridor to make way for the tram. And that was a hard decision to make. It's not one I wanted to do, but we had to make that decision. So I fully understand where this is going with the solar energy. It's just totally the wrong place to put a solar farm, is my opinion. And I would not support the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Phillips. Probably nothing else to add to that at this stage. Councillor Price, please.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to pick up on kind of one of the issues around mitigation, because the screening I'm going to put in, and I think I picked up in the report that will be mature in 10 years' time. And should this go forward, I think that we would need to put some sort of condition to strengthen that, because I think 10 years is quite a long time to wait for screening to become fully functional. I think, yeah, I echo what people have said about the nature of the temporary element here, because 40 years isn't that temporary. And I think, like many members, I'm struggling to see evidence in the proposals that have been presented so far that this development does meet the very special circumstances. And I think that's, I guess my question is the fact that it's a solar farm development in and of itself sufficient to meet that very special circumstances criteria? Or are there any other, is there any other evidence that I should be looking for in terms of how effective it is, and what volume of electricity it's generated? Because we're essentially being asked to make a decision on, does the benefit outweigh the harm? And I haven't seen any evidence that's been assessed and evaluated independently to say, well, this is the level of benefit. It just seems to be, it's a solar farm, therefore it's of benefit. And I think, when we're considering this specific application, I want to be able to understand, well, how efficient is this going to be? What's the size of the benefit it's going to deliver, and does that outweigh the harm?
Thank you. Well, before I get an answer on that, I think you've partially answered your own question there, because you mentioned we've got to make a decision, and you're right, and that's why we're here. We've got to make a decision on the information and the evidence we've got in front of us, along with other knowledge that we may individually have. And as ever, with whether it's an application like this with a big landmass, or whether it's a small application somewhere for I don't know, an extension or whatever on a house, as we always say at these meetings, all applications are dealt with on their individual pluses and minuses. So, and that's what we're here doing today. Officers, is there anything else you want to add to that, just to help Councillor Price, or have I sort of explained that correctly?
I think you've explained it quite well. Yeah, the very special circumstances is the renewable energy, and it is for you to decide how much weight to give to that. And as officers, we can obviously set out what our opinions are and what our best recommendation is. We can explain to you the level of harm and how any harm is going to be mitigated. But ultimately, that is what the decision rests on, is how much weight you give that, and then in terms of how those harms are outweighed. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Purdue-Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was warned to prepare for a long meeting this afternoon, and I'm absolutely amazed that you cannot put a cigarette paper between myself and the way that Councillor Upton or Councillor Neil Clark are thinking, because they've said exactly my thoughts, and also Councillor Murray. So I won't labour the point, but I just do want to echo Councillor Thomas's plea towards the end of her contribution, that there is obviously an opportunity for the developer, the applicant, to work more closely with the local community. The report shows the level of objections across parish councils and the local community, and I think possibly a way forward, a positive way forward, could be examined after today's meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Purdue-Horan, and never be afraid of agreeing with other councillors. And I know we're known for falling out with each other, but there are times when we agree as well. Right, Councillor Mason, please.
Thank you. I got stuck on something called efficiency of these things, because I always had in the back of my mind that one of the things about them was that on the whole they were efficient. It's now been put in my mind, and with some doubt, that actually they only really work when the sun is shining or quite bright. And I haven't heard anything that says that this afternoon. I perhaps have missed it somewhere. But if you take the weather that we get at the moment, they can't be terribly efficient. So that was one thing. I too have struggled with these special circumstances because we have them quite a bit when anything near Greenbelt or anything GB gets mentioned, Greenbelt. And I struggle with that part of it. And I was quite hopeful. I thought, oh, well, yes, in the beginning, I thought this seems actually quite a good idea. And it's better than having, you know, the big tall windmills and everything like that. And it probably still is better. But this one seems particularly, when you look at the photographs, it does seem making it very difficult for me to say that I support the recommendation by the officers. So if I could just if you have an answer for me about efficiency, and if you have a percentage efficiency, but that too would be useful. But it would only serve really to balance what we have in front of us and the for and against. The other thing I had to think about was it is one big site in one area. Is it any better though to put smaller sites all over a lot of Rushcliffe? And really, I think this is actually worse because it is very visible and you can see it. And you can drive around Rushcliffe now and look at these sort of sites. But they do seem smaller than what we have before us. And I think I perhaps prefer that thought that they can be better hidden, whereas there's no hiding place for this. And if you put up things so that you can't see the panels, well, then you block off that view to a certain extent. If you put trees there, they grow, and so you've lost the view anyway. So if I could have an answer to that, then I will make my decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mason. Yes, we will get the professional answer. My personal understanding is that even on a cloudy day, they are working to an extent, but obviously they work better when it's brighter. But I'm sure we'll have a professional answer, please.
Yeah, you're quite right, Chair. They work on daylight hours, so sun, you can't see the sun above the clouds. The radiation still comes through the clouds. So yeah, basically they still do work if it's a cloudy day. I think Emily wanted to highlight, yeah, it's not a requirement for us for the applicant to demonstrate the need for renewable energy or its efficiency. But if you wanted a figure for efficiency, my understanding it's around 12%. So the installed capacity is 49.9. But the output would be less than that. That's installed maximum capacity. So if they're operating at 100%, you would get that figure. And that's the same nationwide.
Is that helpful, Councillor Mason? Okay, and your other point about the sort of one big site versus perhaps several smaller sites. Well, again, that's down to decisions to be taken, and which is why we're here today. Right. Okay. I don't think we have any other speakers on this item, and we've had quite a discussion. We have been discussing it for nearly an hour, so we have had quite, I think, a in-depth discussion. There's probably nothing else to say. Now, we've had a proposal moved to refuse planning permission on grounds of not meeting the very special circumstances to harm the green belt. I think we'll go through the wording of that again just in a moment. So so that has been moved by Councillor Clark and seconded by Councillor Upton. Do you just want to confirm what the planning reasons are if we are going to go perhaps down to this to a vote in a few moments?
Thank you, Chairman. So I think I've written this down correctly, but I'm sure Councillor Clark will correct me if I've missed anything. So I understand the motion is to refuse planning permission because the wider benefits of renewable energy, in this case, do not outweigh the substantial harm to the greenbelt by reason of the adverse impact on openness and visual amenity and impact on users of the footpath. And therefore, this does not demonstrate sufficient very special circumstances to outweigh that harm.
Thank you. Is that I've got a thumbs up from Councillor Clark and a spot on from Councillor Upton. Right, let's make a decision on this. And we've got the recommendation in front of us, which is not the one in the report. It's the one to refuse permission for the reasons just given. Show of hands, please. Those in favour of the alternative recommendation. And yes, and for the record, anyone against? No. So that's unanimous. So permission has been refused. What happens now? I pick up on one of our visitors said that I hope that the applicant and local people can perhaps continue to work together to find a way forward. From a personal point of view, I'm rather like other colleagues that I like solar energy, solar farms. They are good, but I think having personally, like most other members, visited the site. I was there yesterday, trying not to look too suspicious as I was walking around, and it's high, and so it did hit me. It was very prominent. So I'm certainly not against solar energy, but I think it needs to be in the right place and the right scale. So we move on. So we move on to our next application. So. Now, we have one more application. You're very welcome to stay and listen to this, or if you want to go, you can go. We'll just wait a moment for the room to clear to settle down a bit. Thank you. Right, we could be waiting a long time.
She's coming.
Oh.
See
I think she's
Right, thank you. We're back to the meeting now. I should, for the record, I should have said under item 2, declarations of interest, that I technically have a declaration of interest in the next item you're discussing because it's in my ward. So I will stand down from this and hand over to Councillor Stockwood, the Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. The second application this afternoon is by Rushcliffe Borough Council, number 23-00189-advertisement. It's to display a freestanding non-illuminated sign on either side of the vehicle entrance to the site. No petitions, no speakers, no demonstrations on this one. So who wishes to be the first speaker? Councillor Mason.
Thank you very much. Oh, yes, you're trying to rush me.
Take the same amount of time.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I can advise there have been no late representations or any further updates to the report. So the application under consideration relates to 2 freestanding non-illuminated signs at the crematorium site, which is located at the corner of Stragglethorpe Road and Main Road to the north of Copgrave, as can be seen on the plan before you. The signage is to be located either side of the vehicular access. As the applicant is the Borough Council, the application has to be determined by Planning Committee. I'll just talk you through quickly some slides. So the site is on the left-hand side of the photograph. This is when travelling south on Main Road towards Copgrave. A bit closer to the same direction. This is coming the opposite direction, travelling north away from Copgrave with the site on the right-hand side. And this is the front of the site where the entrance is, where the signs would be either side of that gated entrance. And a few more. This shows the location in a wider context. So it's the northern access point to the crematorium site. And they'll be located either side of the access. And this is the design of the sign. So the non-illuminated signs are proposed to be of oak, having logo and word. Having a height of 1 metre, being attached to 3 metre high oak posts. And the key issues with the application is the visual impact on the surrounding area from the sign's design and appearance, and any potential impact on public safety, including highway safety. As previously advised, the signs are non-illuminated, to be located either side of the vehicular entrance. They're considered site, and they're not considered to be visually detrimental to the Green Bay location or the countryside and landscape setting. In terms of highway safety, they're designed to identify the entrance and not considered to be overly intrusive or to be a distraction to users of the highway to the detriment of public safety. There are no objections received on the application, and for these reasons, it's considered that the application is acceptable, and the recommendation is to grant subject to the conditions within the report.
Thank you very much, Andrea Baxter, for that presentation. I do apologise again that I was going to miss it. Councillor Mason, you indicated you wish to speak.
Yes, thank you, and sorry for going ahead. Well, we've already passed this application, and a very good application it is, and I personally am looking forward to having a look round it in a week or two's time. I have no objection whatsoever to those signs, and I would like to propose the recommendation that's on page wherever it is. I've just lost it. 70, got it. And that advertisement consent is granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Upton? Do you wish to add anything further?
Could I just ask a question, Chair? I like the design. I get it, the section through an oak tree and it's made of oak and oak posts and all the rest. Is it proposed that the lettering is of a colour? Can I see it? I mean, is it going to be white, green, yellow, or just carved into oak?
Yes, it's going to be painted in a graphite grey finish, the logo and the lettering. I haven't got a picture of it, but it's a dark grey.
So the letters are dark grey on a natural oak background. And it complies with all the people with disabilities, partially sighted, blind, and everybody else, presumably. We're not going to trip ourselves up on anything like that. Good, thanks.
Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Just a question. I'm just interested. All it says is Rushcliffe Oaks. Is there anything else that says anything else in terms of what the premises are, or etc.? I realise if somebody's looking for the crematorium called Rushcliffe Oaks, then that tells them, I suppose. But I was just interested whether there is anything else that informs people as to what it is, as opposed to just Rushcliffe Oaks. This is for the benefit of the crowd, which I thought had come to view this application, which clearly I was incorrect.
Thank you. There are some highway directional signs in the vicinity. You can see on this photograph one that clearly says crematorium.
Sorry, I'll second it, Madam Chairman. Sorry.
Councillor Thomas, you're indicating.
Just to say that I already queried the same question as Councillor Clark, and I got the answer that it could be used for other things. So the directional signs outside would be identifying it as the crematorium, the road sign, whereas this is the name of it, really. And I support the recommendation. Thank you.
I understand County Council have got a directional sign to it, which is rather over large at the moment and which is going to be reduced in size. So people should know that it's a crematorium they are approaching. Okay, well, no more speakers. It's been proposed by Councillor Mason, seconded by Councillor Upton, that it's recommended that advertisement consent is granted subject to the following conditions, numbers 1 to 6, on page 70. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. The chairman is returning to close the meeting and make you any money.
Thank you. Yes, there is actually one other item on the agenda, which is really just for noting, and that is a report of recent planning appeals, which is item 5 on the agenda. Does anybody have any comments or questions on these? As I say, it's really just for noting. So, no, okay, righty ho. So that is the final item on the agenda. So thank you for your attendance and your contributions. We did have a very, well, all applications are important, but the solar farm application was a big, important application. I think we had a good discussion on it. I know there will be people out there who will disagree with what we have decided, but as decision makers, we've made that decision on, and I believe on good material reason grounds. So with that said, thank you. I don't know what the weather's doing, whether it's still snowing, so have a safe journey home, and we'll close the meeting at 3:50. Okay, thank you.